Mine is a purpose and a person-driven universe. If I want something to happen, then I need to force it forward, I need to strive, and I know that if I do that, the universe will respond. If I sit on my arse and do nothing and blame other people, then it will respond in like manner. So for me, it was that point recognising that if I want to do something with my life, I need to take responsibility. I need to sit down and take responsibility. And it was at that point that I left the factory job, got a job on a building site, which nearly killed me. It was so hard. And then I built myself up to become a doorman and really built a hardiness and a courage, and from that was able to write the first book. And I wrote the first book in the factory toilet. So I love it when people say to me, and people say it to me often, believe me, they say to me, and it's excuse making again, if I had the time, if I had the opportunity, if I had the facilities, if I had the help, I would write a book. But actually what they're really saying is, I'm too scared to write a book. I'm too scared in case I succeed, I'm too scared in case I fail. Because if you want to write a book, you will write a book. If you want to climb a mountain, you will climb a mountain. If you want to be a sculptor, you will become a sculptor. I had a friend called Steve Winterburn, who used to be a toilet cleaner at the Dunlop, and I watched his ascent, because I used to work with him for a while, and I watched him go from working as a toilet cleaner and giving up his job to start a little print factory. He started it part-time at first. He started a little print room where he printed logos of dogs on t-shirts. Then he'd go to the dog shows and sell the t-shirts. So he had this little tiny unit, and the unit is still there. Then he built, he really wanted to be a sculptor, so he started to teach himself to sculpt. And he got this little terraced house close to us, and he built himself like an attic room, like an extension, and started to practice the sculpting. Then eventually he gave up his print shop, which is how he made his living, and he went into sculpting first full time, and now he's an internationally renowned sculptor. But I remember when he left the factory, how terrified he was of leaving the security of a job, how hard it was for him, and how he had to take 2 or 3 run-ups at that. Then I remember when he was in the print factory making good money, and he had his own little print room. I remember him bleeding himself away from that and going into sculpting, and remember how terrified he was to let go of the print room, just in case. He kept saying, I don't know whether this will make money, I don't know whether where I'm going will make money, I don't know whether the sculpting is going to kick off. But I watched him eventually do it, and each time he was afraid of doing it. So it's not that you're not going to be afraid, it's that you step into the fear. I've watched lots of very ordinary people find their natural bias, find their true will, develop it, and go off to live the most extraordinary lives. So if people like me, people like Steve, and pretty much all the people I'm around at the moment, they've all come from these places, if we can do that, then of course anybody can do that. So from this, remember this is the first level of manifestation. What you're looking at here are a physical manifestation of my thinking. So my experiences, my thoughts, brought through the nib of a pen and put into print. With my imagination practiced into a book, then later into this book has been all around the world now. It's got a cult following all around the world. Then it obviously went into this £2 million feature film. It became a short film, which I think we won £10,000 to make this film. It's called Bouncer. And that film ended up going into 32 international festivals. Everybody said to me at the time, who wants to hear about a Coventry bouncer? Who's interested in a Coventry bouncer? And it wasn't about a Coventry bouncer. It was about, and same as Watch My Back, it's not about a Coventry bouncer. Watch My Back is about a man who is afraid of his own potential, but decides to go out and confront it. And that's what this is about. So this first film I did, Watch This Bouncer, which is a short story taken from Watch My Back. When we first did it, the producer said to me, who would you like to act in it? And remember, this was just Screen West Midlands, it was a local film group. And I said, Ray Winston. And they all kind of had a bit of a giggle and said, well, Ray's on Hollywood fees. You know, we can't afford to pay for Ray's lunch, let alone, you know, get him on the film. I said, well, why don't you ask him? Because I've written it for Ray. I've seen Ray in my mind's eye. I always believe in aiming very, very high with stuff. Even if you don't achieve it first time, aiming high. And of course Ray did it. He decided to do it. So suddenly we've gone from you know, a film which we thought we'd get local actors with, to having a Hollywood star in Coventry, in one of the pubs where I used to work, acting and doing my words with Paddy Considine and Ronnie Fox and Sean Parks, some of our best actors. I was wrestling with Ray Winston and Paddy Considine at 2 in the morning outside Scholars nightclub in Coventry, because I was doing the choreography. So I was there with my children, watching Ray Winston do my lines and saying to my kids, see what I told you, it can be done. People like us can do whatever we want to do. Anybody can do whatever they want to do. So that was a massive expansion again for me. That film went on to become BAFTA nominated, so suddenly we were at the BAFTAs, and then while we were on the set of Bouncer, I got talking to Ronnie Fox, who's Ray's friend, and Ronnie was fantastic at telling stories. He was an amazing storyteller, and he was talking about when he was in AA, when he was in NA, and he was talking about when they got up into Scotland, and Ray would say, tell Geoff about when we was in Scotland getting drunk, and tell me these fantastic stories. And I said to Ronnie, I could do you a great film based just around that story, based just around that. So I wrote Brown Paper Bag for Ronnie, and that went on to win the BAFTA. And of course, then we did Clubbed. And then there was a story. There was a story in Watch My Back, in this book, about me shaking hands with a guy that I was sexually abused when I was a boy, when I was 12. And when I was kind of 30, 32, I bumped into this guy, and it was when I was leaving the doors. I was very physical. I was capable of killing people. I got these techniques. I was trying to move away from violence, and I bumped into this guy in a McDonald's, and decided that I was going to absolutely, unequivocally, totally destroy him. And I did that by forgiving him. I went over to him, and he was sat right opposite me. It was the universe nudging me, because it was just me and this guy in the whole place. And he didn't recognise me because I was a lump by then. I was, 16 stone and this fighting machine. And I walked over to him and I said to him, you don't remember me. But I said, when I was a boy, you abused me. And he went to stand up, and I said, sit down. And he wouldn't sit down, and I said very firmly, sit down. And he sat down. And I said to him, you abused me, but I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to forgive you. I told him twice. And as I got up to walk away, as I went to walk away, he got up. And he put his hand out, and his hand was like that, and he was trembling. And he was asking me to shake his hand. And what he was saying to me is, are you forgiving me, or are you forgiving me? And I knew for me to untangle myself from this abuse, for me to give his karma back to him, and for me to be free, I needed to forgive him. In Romans, Paul's letters to the Romans in the New Testament, Romans 12:20, it said, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap fires of coal on his head. Vengeance belongs to me, says the Lord. And what that said to me was that when you give over, if you've been abused and you give it over, you give it to the law of karma, and you trust that karmic law will unfold, everyone will get what they need to get. He will get his comeuppance, and I'll become free of it. So then, someone that abused me when I was 12 can't still be abusing me when I'm 50. So I forgave this guy, and I wrote about it very briefly in this book, and I talked about that handshake moment. And two young directors, friends of mine called the Shamazian brothers, approached me and they said, we'd really like to make that handshake film. It became known as the handshake film. And I said, what do you mean handshake film? Well, that scene in Watch My Back where you forgive that guy, we want to make that film. And I remember thinking, oh God, do I want to go there again? Do I want to write about that? It's such a difficult area, so uncomfortable to talk about. And of course I realised, the moment I realised it was uncomfortable, I needed to go back there and look at that. So I said, yeah, I'll do that film for you. And that became Romans 12:20, which if you haven't seen it, you can watch it on the site free. It's a beautiful film. It's got divinity in it. We made it. We had 37 people give us £1,000, and then after the film was made, we got about £300,000 worth of free work because people felt God in it. Even Lisa Gerrard gave us the music free to use this, and Lisa Gerrard did the music for Gladiator. And this film again went to win awards all around the world. That comes from this book, which comes from this book, which comes from these pads, which come from ideas, from experiences in my mind. It all comes through the nib of a pen. I created dozens of realities through the nib of a pen. Romans now is Romans 12:20 now is being made into a feature film called Romans, and we're attaching a Hollywood cast. Hopefully we're going to shoot it in America, and it's because I believe it will become a beautiful film because it's got divinity in it. So that all came from this one book. So all of these, this book's like a Pandora's box for me. But it started with me confronting my fears and turning into my fears. The Buddhists call it leaning into the sharp edges. That's where it started for me. So if that works for me, and I'm an ordinary person, then of course it can work for you. Oh, and of course it, you know, I did meant to say that it ended up at the BAFTAs. There's my BAFTA. It's quite heavy. Been there twice, been nominated twice. And again, what I like to do with this, just excuse me 1 second, if I put this on here, is I like to show that to people and say, what does it represent to you? To me it's a BAFTA. I mean, obviously we can see it's a piece of metal, and we don't need to get too caught up in it, we don't need to get too egoic about it, but it's what I had to become to get to there. What does it represent to you? To me it represented impossible things. What does it represent to you? Does it represent good health? Does it represent, you know, being a sculptor? Does it represent the top job? Or does it represent a great relationship? Does it represent, you know, travelling around the world? Whatever it represents to you is possible. It's possible. There are infinite amounts of possibilities. And I like to show that because that came from these notepads. And of course, you know, if I was in a factory 20 years ago and saying to people, I'm going to win a BAFTA, I'm going to win an Oscar, I'm going to be a film writer, I'm going to be on the world stage with martial arts, people will probably have scoffed, and actually people did. But, you know, looking back, you know, you can see the lineage, you can see where it's come from. Extraordinary things come from ordinary places. There's a great actor I like called Guy Pearce. When he was in Neighbours, nobody would have believed he would have become this A-list actor. They'd have all just said, well, he's a soap actor, he's in a soap. And now that he is an A-list actor, probably loads of people say, oh, I saw it, I knew that was there. You know, when you're trying to make it, quite often people attack you, they think you're pretentious. But when you have made it, they all want to say they sat next to it at school and they all recognised it. So the point I'm making, perhaps the point I'm labouring, is that ordinary people do extraordinary things, but it takes courage, and there are techniques you can learn to develop courage, and you can get it through the Geoff Thompson inspired site, geoffthompson.com. You can get it through, you know, go onto the film site that we've got, Geoff Thompson Writer. Lots of different sites, lots of different places you can go, and you can go out and get the information that will show you that you have choices, that you have opportunities, that you have potential, and you can go and create more with it, you can do more with it. I think I've said enough about that, but hopefully it will register something in you that makes you realise that you have the same potential as everybody else. There is a natural bias, there is something that you're already good at, something that you're already natural at, that you can develop, and it is undeniably right in front of you. There is a word in Islam called yaqeen, and it means undeniably true. Something that is undeniably right in front of you. It's right there. You're right on top of it. So you just have to sit quietly, find a very quiet, still place, and sit. Let the layers just kind of slip away, and you'll figure out exactly what it is you need to do, where you need to be going, and then you must head towards it. And where you want to go isn't probably where your mum or your dad or your brother or your sister or your friends or your wife or your husband think you should be going, but it's where you know you should be going and what you know you should be doing. So that's all for now. Thank you.